On today's podcast, we work and learn from Mack Story. Mack Story helps leaders engage the front line to improve the bottom line by developing the blue-collar workforce and those who lead and support them. You will learn how to lead your team with confidence by developing their skills and understanding of what it takes to be successful in business today.
This is a Touchstone Publishers presentation, your trusted source of leadership knowledge.
Well, good morning, everybody. The traditional good morning, no matter what time of day it is or what time of day you think it is, it's good morning. So welcome, everyone. Want to just make sure we didn't really check mics very much. Mack, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. How about you?
I got you just perfect. So that's the way that we let everybody know I'm talking with Mack Story today. And just like it says, he is the blue-collar leadership. You can reach him out at bluecollarleadership.com. But this gentleman, we had a chance to speak. Those of you may remember last week, we interviewed his wife, which you found to be a very powerful person. But let's talk about Mack and some of the work that he's doing. Absolutely powerful, because what he's done, and we're going to let him teach us, is teach the skills needed for the blue-collar worker, which has been vastly ignored by us as leaders. I think if every one of us sitting here today listening to this, all of us CEOs and staff, we tell our senior leaders, we put them through leadership training. But we miss a key piece. So Mack, again, welcome, and thank you very much for sharing your knowledge we're going to have today.
Thank you, Glenn. It's a privilege to support folks who want to help other people. We're all on the same team, so it's a privilege to help you in any way I can. Hopefully you'll find value, and your listeners will find value in whatever great questions you ask. I'm excited to hear your questions. You always have some really good ones.
Well, let's start off with kind of what I consider a hard one, because everybody has a definition for this, but it's kind of one of those phrases that just it's almost a slogan. Be a good leader. Will you mind defining leadership?
Okay, and I picked this up the way I'm going to define it. I actually picked it up from John Maxwell. Rhea and I, my wife, have done a lot of training and development with John Maxwell, but I elaborate on it maybe a little more than John does sometimes. But he basically says leadership is influence. And my first book that I wrote was titled Defining Influence. Increasing your influence increases your options. So when I talk about leadership as influence, especially when I'm talking to small enough crowds that I can interact with them, we do a lot of on-site training. So sometimes, there's 20 or 30 people in the room. Sometimes when we speak at a conference, they may be 1,500 or 2,000. We can't really interact with them that way. But when it's small enough room, I ask them, do you believe the person in the room at any given moment, at any given time, for any given reason, the person who has the most influence, is that person the leader? If they have the most influence, are they the leader? Because it's common sense. They have to be. If they have the most influence, they're the leader. It doesn't matter about position, title, rank, authority, that sort of stuff. So once I get them to buy into that influence is leadership is influence, I ask them, who on this planet has influence? And they always say everybody. And I say, everybody's a leader then. I say, who is influenced by other people? And they always say everybody. Everybody's influenced by other people. I said, so everyone is a follower. And I said, who manages things and processes? And they say everybody. I say, at home and at work. And they like, yes, at home and at work. I said, so everybody's a leader, everybody's a follower, and everybody's a manager. The key to our effectiveness is getting it right, doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason in the right way, and being in the right role, leader, follower, manager.
Now, when you say influence, and I want to make sure I remember correctly, is influence, the person who has influence has the most options? Is that the way I read it?
Well, the subtitle of that book is Increasing Your Influence Increases Your Options.
Okay.
If you have more influence, you're going to have more options.
Okay, so I like the subtitle, but I'll be honest with you, and this is why I want you to coach me. I'm a little bit lost with that. Okay, I have influence; it increases my options. Explain that to me a little bit. Coach me on that.
Yeah, I teach when I'm teaching leaders, and actually, I forgot to say this at the beginning, Glenn, but you probably already figured it out. But I want to make sure your audience knows that I know it. But I like people to know that I'm bilingual, and a lot of people think I speak English and Spanish because we speak all over the country, but it's actually English and country. I'm better at speaking country than I am English. So I just want everybody to know that I know that, and you probably knew it. Some of those folks listening would know it, but This is the best I can
University
do.
and country. Okay, I got it. That one. That one's gonna get told all over the country. I want you to know that.
I tell it every time I speak. We got to speak at Yale University in 2018, and that's the first thing that comes out of my mouth. And I had on a suit then, but I told them that was a disguise. That ain't really what I like to wear. I had to
Yeah.
dress up to be at Yale. But
Be
talk
ready
about
for that.
influence, and when I'm teaching leaders, I like them to know that there's two kinds of influence. Well, there's a lot of different kinds, but relative to leadership, there's authentic influence and artificial influence. Artificial influence comes with your position title. I got control over you. I control your pay. I control when you get off, that sort of stuff. And people follow those leaders. They may not respect the person, the leader as a person, but they respect their position. So they somewhat have to follow if they want to work there and get along. But what I try to teach leaders is to set that aside and lead with authentic influence. Authentic influence is based on your character. It's who you are as a person. So when I say increasing your influence increases your options, just like you see back behind me, that's not all the books I've ever read, but that's a lot of the books that I've read. You can't see a lot of them on my phone. But when I started reading these books and started learning about leadership, learning about influence, my influence increased. I never planned to speak at Yale University. I just plan every day to do things to increase my influence.
Okay, so like a reading or something like that. So when we talk about though being authentic, there's leaders out there that the authentic person that they know to be is evil, hateful, jealous, wanting to keep the other person down so they can do better. So that authentic influence, that being authentic, that kind of, again, you need to coach me up on this a little bit, because I think when we're telling people sometimes be authentic, that means to them, well, okay, I'm mad at you. I'm going to tell you off. I'm going to curse you out. I'm going to punch you. I mean, coach me up on that.
Yeah, so when being authentic is highly valuable. Rhea teaches and writes in her book. She's got a book on the communication. Straight Talk, the power of effective communication. She says in that book that transparency is the purest form of telling the truth. And when I read that, I do what we all do. When you hear something thought provoking, I said, "Is that true? Is transparency the purest form of telling the truth?" And I decided that it is. And why is it? And the reason that I decided it was is because transparency is telling the truth when you don't have to, simply because you want to. And transparency is a key component of being authentic. But like you said, some people are authentically angry or authentically have poor character. So relative to everything we're teaching how to be if you want to have positive influence. Like I told you, there's artificial and there's authentic influence. There's also positive influence and negative influence, because mean people, they have a lot of influence with other mean people. Good people have a lot of influence with other good people. So it's really all comes down, ultimately everything is based on our values. Why can I teach one thing and somebody loves me and somebody else hates me? It's because people who love me share values with me. People who hate me don't share values. They may feel manipulated instead of motivated, and that's a huge component as well, because there's not just one character trait that creates influence. There's thousands and thousands of them, and to build trust, you got to get them all right in the moment. To create distrust, you don't have to get but one of them wrong. You get one character trait wrong, you're creating distrust with someone.
Okay, and I don't follow that, because, well, when you're coaching people, that idea of, okay, get one wrong, you build distrust. How do you coach people? Now, you just started this question, but how do you coach people to understand that one mistake, one coaching wrong creates distrust?
Okay,
and
so
how to fix it, I guess.
Yep, how to fix it is a lot longer answer. How to get them to buy into it and see it. It's real simple. It's simple for me. Some people struggle with it. What I did it just 2 days ago. We were speaking at a precast concrete company, and Rhea and I usually speak together. So she's standing there beside me. We both have microphones. We toss it back and forth. So it's easy for me to demonstrate. It'd be easy if she wasn't there. I had to just pretend someone was there. But when she's there, I'm teaching this, and I teach the point, and I know the people in the audience are questioning just like you are. They just don't shout it out. So what I do is I say, I gave them an example 2 days ago. I said, assume Maria and I are both forklift drivers. We're both come to wherever you're working. We come with a forklift. We pick up a pallet of goods or something that you've got ready to go. Rhea pulls up. She hops off. She comes over, pats you on the shoulder. tells you, ask you how your day's going, says she's about to go buy the supply cabinet. Do you need any gloves? You need any rags? Anything I can do to help you? You need anything like that? That's the way she runs her operation, which is her business, which is her. It's what I teach the blue collar frontline people. You're in business for yourself. You're trying to grow this business, meaning me. I'm trying to grow my influence and get positive word of mouth advertisement. And then I say, okay, I pull up. You're having some problems. You ask me if I get off and help you. And I say, no, I won't get off and help you. That ain't my job to help you. My job is to drive this forklift. And that's what I do, and I do it very well. There's people like that.
Yeah.
And so, and I say, okay, now you just heard this example. You just saw one simple example of two different types of people, the way they treat other people. And do I want to add value to you, or do I just want to ignore you? Basically, that's the two different types of people. I said, if you had to let one of us go because there's a downturn in the economy, which one are you going to let go if you're the boss? Pretty obvious.
Right.
What if one of us is going to get promoted? It's pretty obvious which one. Also, everyone who's watching, you who are working there, and everyone else who works around who is watching us, what is everybody going to say about Rhea and how she operates her business, again, which is herself, versus what they're going to say about me? So that's the way I do it. I give them an example, but I'll narrow it down to one thing. I say, Glenn, imagine Rhea and I are on your team. We're both rock stars. You can't tell the difference between us except for one thing. When Rhea has some information, she gives you all the information. When I have some information, you ask me, I give you what you're asking for, but I withhold a little bit of information. I don't lie to you. I just don't give you information without you pulling it out of me. So again, which one of us would you get rid of if you had to? Which one of us would you promote? You have to break it down. The easiest way to do it is say, these two people are a rock star, except for one thing. And then you'll see the value of that one thing. You could put any character trait there, but what you have to understand is there's not just one thing. There's thousands of things, but we got to be aware of each thing before we can address each thing.
See, now that clears up the other question I had, which I put up on the screen. Team members aren't always team players. So I thought that, and I liked the quote you had from former Denver Bronco Hall of Famer Peyton Manning on there.
Oh, absolutely. That's so good. That's absolutely.
The best team player is the one who makes the team better.
Yeah.
I think I just paraphrased that, but
yep.
Now I understand, because I always said, you're a team member, you may be a detriment. But you're saying that if you have this character flaw that says withhold information, you're not a team player.
Nope, you're looking out for yourself. You may want to appear special. A lot of people want to hold information. They may know how to do something, and so instead of training everyone how to do it and helping everybody else, they want to appear as the hero. But see, they assume that makes them more valuable if I'm the hero. But see, all you got to do is ask them a question. You say, okay, Rhea's standing here, I'm standing here. Rhea, when she goes and learns something, she teaches everybody on the team. When you send me to a conference and I learn something, I withhold it. I want to be the hero. So now you're the boss. Which person would be more valuable to you? Because see, when I ask that question, everybody can see it clearly. I say it's easy to see, but ain't easy to do. It takes common sense to understand it, but it takes uncommon sense often to do what's commonly understood.
So now I got to share this, because you walk your talk, as clear to me, especially right now, because when we did our pre-call, I said, hey, this has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about, but it turns out it does. I asked you, how are you getting your customers? I mean, what do you, we didn't really talk about it, but, because speakers don't like to share how much I get paid and this and that. You had no problem saying, you know what, this is what I do. And I'm not going to share this online, because we don't want every other speaker who might be tuning in to say, oh, I like Mack's Ideal. Because Glenn's going to get Mack's Ideal, and if you want to get it, call Mack. And
I'll tell them all they got to do is call. I tell people all the time.
But you shared exactly what has to happen, and then I have to shape it for the model that I have.
Absolutely.
But you shared it. And this also goes to your last name. I mean, Story. By you using Rhea, and you're telling a story that people can relate to. The story of, hey, withholding information. That's powerful. That's what you do. I mean, and I think you have a series of books out, right?
Yes, sir. I've got 14 books between me and Rhea together. We have 32 books, and some of hers are journals. But yeah, I've got a series of books specifically for the blue collar workforce. And I tell people I help develop the blue collar workforce, those who lead them, and those who support them. A lot of people think it's only the frontline entry level people, but I mean, I've spoken to 80 top leaders, leading a $3 billion organization from 40 countries around the world. We speak to people like that too, but my passion is the frontline entry level workforce, and I've got 2 books specifically for those people.
Well, before you tell me about the books, why did you choose Frontline?
Well, the front line, I can tell you one of the reasons is my first 10 years of my career, I was a frontline factory worker. I operated CNC lathes, mills, and drills. And the first 20 years of my career, I worked inside multi-billion-dollar global organizations. And it was 2005 that a frontline quality technician, I was 17 years into my career. A frontline quality technician took my iPod, put a lot of music on it for me. When he brought it back, he said, "Hey, Mac, I put a business book on there for you." I guess he thought I was a big dog or whatever. I was a lean manager and quality manager reporting to the plant manager and supporting other plant managers around the country and in Mexico. But I'm still just a regular guy, just like I am today. I'm nobody special. I'm just another human being trying to make a difference. But anyway, he brought it back. He said, "I put a business book on there for you." I said, "What is it?" He said, "It's the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People." I said, "Is it any good?" He said, "I don't know. I ain't never listened to it."
Oh,
And
no.
and he said, "But my friend's dad said it was really good." I said, "Okay." And I didn't know it, but it was only an hour version. The whole book's probably 13 hours on audio, but he put me a 1 hour audio highlight on there. And 3 years later, I resigned 20 years after I started and started my own lean manufacturing consulting company. And I'm driving around to meet clients. And what happened was I had my audio iPod plugged in and my music was playing. All of a sudden, a guy started talking. I'm like, "What is this?" And I looked at the screen because it was telling me what was playing, and it said the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I was like, "Oh, this is that business book Zach gave me. I'm starting my own business. Maybe I'll listen to it." And so I let it play. And Glenn, it changed my life. I had never heard anything ever in my life. I had never heard anything like he was talking about, which is everything that I talk about today and write
Yes,
about.
yes, yeah,
But
yes,
but you asked me why was I so passionate about the front
yes.
line, and what I knew is I had been on the front lines and worked my way up through engineering type positions and up in the management, in plant management, not the plant manager, but leading plants. And no leader in my 20-year career had ever introduced me. They had never invested one penny or 1 minute introducing this type of content to me or anybody that I knew in 20 years in manufacturing. I'm sure the white collar executives got introduced to this kind of stuff. And as I started learning about it, I've been reading every day too, Glenn, since then. Every
Yeah.
day since 2008, I read every single day. And that's what you hear coming out of my mouth is me learning it, applying it, and then sharing it. And I can't remember nothing on purpose, but all this stuff's it's just up there. So that's
It's just space.
the people just been overlooked, and they are so hungry. I mean, I get to meet these people. I get to see them transform their lives. They follow me on Facebook. They reach out to me and they text me, and I talk to them long after the conference is over, my training's over. One young man, I've been mentoring him since 2013.
No.
His income has went up 8 times, and he wasn't making bad money when I met him, but
Oh, yeah, yeah.
he was leading about 4 or 5 people, and today he's over in an entire state as a VP, building an entire company within a company for a high impact CEO. He's doing what I did. He's applying it. He's living it.
I want to have you do an analogy for me a little bit. So, the ideal of giving the front line, the blue collar, the same training that we give the CEOs and the senior level managers and of companies, founders. They say CEOs take this C level and senior level people.
Yep.
Do you feel like that makes a huge difference in how we connect as a society with people? I mean, do you feel like that's making a difference in the society?
You mean offering training to the frontline workforce, the same training that we offer to the white collar leaders? Is that what the question is?
Yeah, yeah. Better phrase than I said it, but absolutely that's it.
Absolutely, it does. And the reason is I do teach the same principles. I teach the same principles to 8th graders when we speak at high schools as I teach to the 80 top leaders, leading a $3 billion organization. And I'll give you an example because what I do is I teach everyone to lead because it doesn't matter. Anybody can lead. The frontline entry level person can lead their boss. They can lead 3 or 4 levels above their boss. If the CEO wants to talk to them, they can lead the CEO if they have the right character and the competency to go along with it. But our character is going to either maximize or minimize our competency. We got to have a competency, but also our character is either going to maximize it or minimize it. Doesn't matter if I've got 10 PhDs. If nobody likes me, they're not going to do me very much good. And if I don't have any degree, but I can influence people, then I can do a lot of good with my influence.
So knowledge is not necessarily power without the right influence.
Yeah, I learned from John Maxwell when we were in Guatemala in 2013. The underlying principle, we were down there to train 20,000 Guatemalan leaders with John Maxwell. There was 150 of us and John, and we trained 20,000 leaders in about 2-3 days. The underlying principle first was transformation begins with me. I got to start with myself. But the underlying principle to help them understand why they needed to develop their character, and he based it on research studies he knew about from Harvard and Stanford, and basically says 87% of our influence, our success, comes from character, and only 13% from competency. And see, most blue-collar organizations, even a lot of white-collar organizations, they focus on the competency because it's required. And most of the time, they don't even touch on the character because it's not required. But if you ever ask them, why are most people being fired or terminated? They're going to tell you character issues. And then you ask them, how much time, money, and energy and resources do you dedicate to competency training compared to character training? And then they'll tell you, most people will tell you, most all of it goes to competency training, and very little, if any, goes to character training. Yet that's where all the problems are, is on the people side.
Well, okay, so now I will agree with you. Books like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People help people with their character. But can we really improve people's characters, since that's started way back in 2-3 years old?
Yep. Yeah, I remember when one of the classes I took when I was in college, an elective, because I've always been interested in psychology, and that's all leadership is the psychology of influence, is what I call it. Yeah. But I remember, and I believed it back then, but now I don't believe it. But I remember taking a class where they said basically your character and who you are as a person by the age of 5 or 6, it was kind of already, established, and you're not really going to change that. But now I know it's a choice. I mean, I know I used to have terrible character. One of the things that I worked on the most since I hit play on that audio in 2008 is my temper. I used to be short-tempered. I would tell people short temper runs in my family. That's what my family would say. All of us would also provide the evidence to support the belief. All you had to do is hang around us and you would see it. But you can't change anybody's character. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do every day, but I'm not literally trying to change it. Like the folks I talked to last week, we were in Charleston, South Carolina, and one of the VPs come up. He said, Mack, I love what you do. You don't come in and tell anybody how to be. You tell them how they could be, and then you invite them to come on a journey with you if they want to. You don't come in and point the finger at people and tell them how they are. And I don't. What I tell them is, I'm going to tell you some stories, and I'm going to tell you some stuff, and there's going to be an invisible mirror come up in your face, in front of your face. Nobody can see anything in the mirror but you. I said, but I'll tell them, you got to agree with me before I start talking and that mirror comes up. You can't blame me for what you see in the mirror, because I don't have anything to do with what's in your mirror. I got everything to do with what's in my mirror. So I tell them a lot of stories how I changed my character, but you can't make somebody. As a leader, you got to model high character. If you want your team to have high character, you got to model it. And then you got to motivate and inspire your team to want to change their character. I got a book on culture, blue collar leadership and culture, the 5 components for building high performance teams. And sometimes leaders will call me and say, hey, I want you to help me transform my culture. And I ask them, what does that mean to them? Because I want to know I want to hear their version. And then I tell them, you need to know what it means to me. So then we can decide if we want to do business. Because what it means to me, Mr. or Miss Leader, is you have to change your values. Whatever values you have today created the culture you have today. If you want to change that culture, you got to start working on you, because until you change your values, it's not going to happen. And I'll tell them, you calling me may be a sign of you changing your values. You may not have ever reached out to anyone. You may not have ever valued getting external help, but today you are. So if that's true, they're changing their values just by being on the phone with me.
That's powerful. That's powerful, because if you're talking about changing values, and maybe that phone call is a start of them changing their values, but you're not letting them escape and say, okay, change the blue-collar workers that report to me, get the new culture with them, but I don't really have to worry about it. They just got to do it.
Yeah, it's a holistic system. A lot of people, again, because one of my taglines is I help leaders engage the front line to improve the bottom line. And a lot of them who don't know better think that means I'm going to go work on the front line. I will help the front line, but I want to start with the leaders, because the reason the front lines are not engaged is because the leaders are not engaged.
Yeah,
And
absolutely
I
true.
focus on the root cause. And I don't mean they're not engaged with the people, but they're usually engaged heavily in management of people, but they're not engaged at all in leadership of people. That's what I say when I say the leaders are disengaged. So the
Yeah.
people being disengaged is nothing more than a symptom of the leaders not being engaged. And I know that most people don't know that, especially the
Well,
ones
it's
who
true.
have the problem.
Well, yeah, because they don't see themselves. They don't see
That
themselves in it yet. I want to ask you, and this is not the hard question for you, but it is. Out of all the books you've written on blue collar leadership, which is the one book you have the most passion for? If you were to say, hey, you're only going to get one book from me, what's that one book?
so it's the one that I wrote for the frontline entry level workforce. It's called Blue Collar Leadership, Leading from the Front Lines. I wrote
Okay.
it for the brand new entry level person. It don't have to be brand new. They could be 60 and still be an entry level person.
Right.
But I've had CEOs of 5,000 person company I'm thinking of at the moment who read that book because he was interested in maybe getting it out to his workforce. But he called me the next day on LinkedIn. He had seen it. Somebody said something about it on LinkedIn. He ordered it, read it, reached out to me the next day, told me, he said, Mac, I got so much out of that book. He said, that book is phenomenal for me. And he's the CEO of 5,000 people. But I wrote it for the entry level person who ain't never heard about leadership, who don't think they are a leader and maybe never want to be a leader. And he said, I took it home, gave it to my 16-year-old daughter, who's probably never going to be a blue collar worker. But I told her, you got to read this book. And so that's if I could talk about any book all day, every day, it would be that book. And my audience would be frontline entry level workers, just to introduce them to it, because they are hungry. The further you get up the org chart, the less hungry most people are, because they got a better life, a bigger wallet, a bigger bank account, a nicer house, nicer
Yeah.
car, and they settle. Folks at the bottom, they're still hungry.
Yeah. And further up the ladder, they might have already had the exposure to some of these things. Might have.
Yep.
One of the things that I found really interesting, I asked you that question because, and I don't want you to go through all 30, but because you said there's thousands of them. But you talk about 30 traits. Can you just give me one or two of those traits that help leaders be better?
Yep. And you're talking about the 30 Traits is a different book of mine, Blue Collar
Yes.
Leadership and Teamwork, 30
Yeah.
Traits of High Impact Players. So that book is how to be while you're doing what you do. The book I mentioned before, Leading from the Front Lines, is how do I become a high impact individual?
Mm-hmm.
This
Mm-hmm.
book is about how do I become a high impact team player? Now, I'm not only good by myself, but now I'm good with other people. Those people are highly valuable. So
Okay.
I'll tell you, the first trait out of that
Traits.
book is be growth oriented. Every one of those traits start with the word be. You got to be something. So be growth oriented. A lot of people are goal oriented, and there's nothing wrong with having goals if they're supporting a higher level of being growth oriented. I may have a goal of going to college to get a degree. I go to college, I get a degree, then I coast the rest of my life and just take whatever job I can get because I'm not really growth oriented. But if you're growth oriented, that's why I read every day. I've
Yeah.
told you I read every day. I don't have a goal of how many books I'm going to read. I have a goal of being growth oriented. I read every day, or I watch audio, listen to audios, or watch videos every day. Be growth oriented relative to your character and your competency. And I say about 80% focus on your character, about 20% on your competency.
Well, you know I'm into that B. That's the key. Be. I mean, you can't be rich, but you can be something else. You can be a leader, which might let you be rich.
You can be a
Be,
person of value who people will make rich.
yes, exactly. So I'm all into that B, and that's one. Give me just one more out of the 30 traits.
Be trustworthy.
Okay.
Because see, the foundation of authentic influence is trust. See, if I don't have to be trustworthy if I'm your boss because I have artificial influence. But if I want to influence you because of my character, I got to be trustworthy.
All
So
right.
trust is the foundation of authentic influence, because if I'm not your boss, I don't have any control over you. If you don't trust me, you're not going to follow me whatsoever. You're going to stay away from me. So in my book, Defining Influence, I teach about trust being the foundation of authentic influence. But also then I teach what's the foundation of trust. And I teach that our intention is the foundation of trust. Am I trying to motivate you or manipulate you? And then see, that comes down to what are your values. Some of the stuff I talk about, some blue collar people sitting in the room, they feel manipulated because the boss told them to come in there. They start hearing me talk. They don't care nothing about this stuff. So they feel manipulated. Other people, maybe the boss told them to come, doesn't matter, but they like hearing what I'm talking about. They wish the whole organization would adopt this.
Yeah.
Then they feel motivated. So if they feel motivated, I'm in a position now to build trust with them as a human being. If they feel manipulated, until I can build trust, or I can borrow trust from you, who maybe builds trust with them outside of here, and then they come back to me because maybe they do trust me. They still have to trust me before feel not manipulated before I can ever build trust. Got to get past that.
Absolutely got to build trust. This is something came up a couple podcasts ago where the gentleman was talking about, we have accidents, and we got into a discussion about airline accidents and death, and airlines. That was our example we used. But his premise is that there's accidents that we have. People could die, people could get hurt in these accidents, but we tend to blame the employee when it's a system that has failed the employee. So that brings me to the question of, okay, when a blue-collar worker fails or causes something to happen, is it a lack of trust from the senior level that causes us to fire that employee? Trust that he learned a lesson or she learned a lesson? Or am I making too much out of that connection?
There's a lot in that question. I knew, Glenn, you asked good questions, and I could talk for hours on every question you ask, and I'm trying to keep them short. It may seem like I'm going long, but one thing you said was
not at all. Keep on going.
One thing you said was, the system failed them, but who created the system? We're higher level people. It's always about the people, and that's where a lot of leaders, they want to use frontline folks as a scapegoat. And I'm going to tell you a little quick story. When I was consulting for lean manufacturing process improvement, I was in one company and I worked in multiple sites they had in different states. And I was in one state, and somebody from another state called me and they said, Mac, I just want to let you know, because I had a lot of trust. It was somebody, just a worker. Workers had my cell phone number when I was a consultant everybody. I built trust with everybody, because when I walked in as a consultant, I was responsible for the entire organization. Right. Whether the CEO and the owners thought that or not, I thought that, and it was the truth. So they call me and they say, hey, Mac, it's like the owner's son fired somebody. He was like a VP, executive, whatever. This multiple generations leading this company, and they said so-and-so fired somebody. And I said, what happened? They said, well, they designing a new part, and they were making the part, and this person, made some bad parts and made too many of them, and they let them get past them, and the VP come out and fired them. And so I was back out there the next week, and I was asking, I was hearing about it basically, and the plant manager said, yeah, I went out there and I tried to make them good, and I couldn't make them good. I couldn't even do it. He'd been working there 20, 30 years. So I called the owner and I said, if you guys are wanting to do what I'm trying to help you create here culture-wise, you got to get this lady back. Y'all got to let go of the pride and ego and say we did the wrong thing, and we got to get this person back. Because once I got involved with it, I said, we got to fix this so nobody can mess it up. So it's something in lean manufacturing called mistake proofing.
Yes.
So people who don't respect people call it idiot proofing. But if you're talking to your team, who is the idiot? Don't use that word, because words matter. So we call it mistake proofing. So we went back. If they would have done that the first time, if the engineering, the leaders, whoever was responsible for designing that machine and that equipment would have asked the question and verified and validated the system that we can't make a mistake, the lady would have been making 100% good parts, just like she was after I got involved. So they brought the lady back, and it built a lot of trust. They restored trust. When you make a mistake, you can't always restore trust, but you can attempt to restore trust. And they actually did restore trust. But I maintained my trust all the way through, because they knew it was wrong. They called me. I didn't go bashing on anybody. Who am I? Nobody reports to me. I'm just a consultant. But I went and asked questions. And that's one thing that high-impact leaders lead with questions. Low-impact leaders lead with directions, because that's all they got. And so you're leading your podcast. You lead them with questions. That's leadership, influence.
Well, yeah, and I think we kind of have the same influence person, which takes me, you tied it just perfect. John Maxwell. I want to talk to you about his 5 rings of leadership.
5 levels of leadership. My second favorite book of all time. Yep.
So it's in certainly in my top 100 books. I can't. Sometimes it's hard for me to label which books I love the best. Just depends on the mood.
Yep.
But that book is now at the top because I'm thinking, okay, that first level, you're leading because you have the title.
Position. Yep.
But are you really?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you have the title. People have to follow you because of the title. But I'm betting that you have somebody on your team who has more influence than you, who doesn't.
More
have
authentic influence.
Yes.
Yep. And see, that's where semantics and it gets so crazy. It's one reason is leadership confuses everybody. You'll have someone who's a high impact manager. Maybe they're a CEO and they've multi-billion-dollar company and they've led it. Actually, they haven't led it well. They've managed it well. And then they write a book and call it leadership. And they're talking about how to manage well, but they call it leadership, but it ain't leadership. And so, you know, the 5 levels, that is my second favorite book. I love that book. Explains it so well. But level 1 is position. Yeah. You mentioned it. People follow because they have to. You know, the key word there is rights. I have the rights to lead. And people follow only because they have to. But see, Glenn, people with options don't have to. They can do something that most leaders don't ever think about. See, I talk about to those leaders, those companies. I said it a couple of days ago. I said, you know, when we have turnover, y'all know what's really happening? I said, people like that word turnover because it makes things look better than it is. I said, everybody in this room, if you're a boss, do you know that you can fire the people who report to you? You know, everybody always knows that. They can terminate. The boss can terminate. I said, did you know those people can terminate you? And then they kind of like, they don't know what I'm talking about. I said, if somebody quits, they just fired you. Yeah. We call it turnover. If a company's got a lot of turnover, they got a lot of bosses being fired, and they're fired for the same reason that the people are fired, because of their character. The number one reason people leave a company is because of their relationship with their boss, and their boss is responsible for that relationship.
See, how do you get people, I mean, you can call it to their attention, and you call it to the attention of some great stories, and that's powerful. I think that allows them to kind of, like I said, pull the mirror up in front of them and go for that. When you're, though, working through a workshop with somebody, now I know it's difficult when you give them a keynote, but when you're in a workshop, do you have a game plan, like, you know, to help people, like, you know, your wife has an acronym, RISE, for hers, one of hers. Do you have something like that if I was going to say, coach me right now on getting out of this ideal of, I have my, well, not the ideal, but I only have my leadership role because of my title. Now I want that next run.
Yeah, and, you know, level 2 of John's book is 5 levels of leadership. Level 2 is relationships. I mean,
because they like you. Yeah.
Yep. And people follow you because what you've done for them personally, right? Or the key words actually, position. I can't think of it now. Production.
All P's. Position. I want to say popularity, but that's not what it is.
I say
permission.
Permission. Yep. Permission, I say it every day, but I can't get it to come out now.
Yeah.
Yep. Permission. The key word is relationships. People follow you because you have to. And when I teach John's book, you know, I use those 5 levels. I'm certified. Rhea and I both certified to teach a lot of John's content, and we're not certified to teach that book as a whole, but there's 26 pages of that book in a book of his called Leadership 101 that we are certified to teach. But all I need is those 5 levels. I could talk about that for months. I don't need the rest of his book. I got my own stuff. But what I teach people is how do you get from level 1 to 2, which is what you're talking about. So I'll write out these 5 levels on a board, and then I'll draw some arrows, and I'll help them understand, because they understand it. It's self-explanatory. That's why I love the 5 levels. You can just write them out, talk them for about 5 minutes. Everybody understands it. They get it. They see it. They never thought about it before. That's why I love that book. And so what I'll tell them is, how do you get from position to permission? It's all about your character. How do you get from permission to production, where people follow you because of your results, what you've done for the organization, on top of what you've done for the people? That's about competency. So going from level 1 to 2 is about character. Going from 2 to 3 is about competency. And I say a lot of people are already getting results. There's already leaders they're formal leaders, but they're actually managers of people. They're getting tremendous results, but they're not level 3 because they're getting tremendous results. How you get those results determines if you're level 1 or level 3. Results doesn't make you level 3. Only results based on relationships with people make you a level 3. So if you're getting really good results, but you're level 1, you got to learn how to build relationships with people. And that's what all of our books are about. And I write my books. Most of them are 30 chapters, 3 pages each, so that they can be used for book studies. And that's what our best clients do, is they actually grow together. So they actually grow together. They build relationships by growing together. Nobody's a teacher. There's no homework. Nobody has to read in advance. They read together. They highlight key points, and then they take a minute apiece to share their key takeaway and why. And the why is the most important, because why is actually a little micro story. So we tell them to have 4 to 10 people, and when they say why was this my key point, they share the point, and then they tell the story, which is a micro story. So you get 4 to 10 micro stories. And I learned about this when we were in Guatemala. That's what we did with John. That's what John wanted to do, to transform the entire nation. The only difference is down there we added on an assessment. So you had to do a personal assessment. And I do try to get my clients to do that later, but most of them are not going to do the book study. So if I can just get them to read together, underline key points, and talk about it, that's all they have to do. It seems so simple, but
yes,
it's all they have to do. Rhea has done it, when she was still working in the hospital. She did it with her team, and she tells a great story about that, where she adopted or inherited 2 team members that hated each other. All of a sudden now they were on her team. She was the boss, and they were in our office together. I'm just shortening it up, but they had a lot of conflict and couldn't work together. And after we come back from Guatemala, Rhea was still working there, and she had tried all kind of other stuff, but then she started doing the book studies. And we didn't have any books then, so she just took the 7 habits and kind of broke it down into small lessons. After 2 or 3 of these book studies, these ladies were crying in tears. And because, see, you created an environment for them to grow and to discuss things and to think about things and to talk about things. And Rhea participated too, so she was able to share her key takeaway and why. And they just started to see each other as people, which is the main problem, is most people don't see each other as people, not even at home.
Well, see, and that's unique, that you tie the production to the very first rung. If you're going to go from 1 to 2, you can get to 3 production, but if you want higher production, you got to have relationships built.
Got to have character.
Got to have character. That's a very important point right there. You got to have the character to have better production.
I mean, Saddam Hussein had great results for himself, and the only people who followed him because they wanted to were people who were like him. We talked about values, right? But he was not a level 3 leader. None of the other dictators are either. Most of the dictators, they live in nice houses and they got all kind of money. They got great results for them individually, but how they got it determines if they level 3 or level 1. And most of them are level 1
because they don't have the character. People are following them because they're dictators.
Because they have to. And see, that's my passion, Glenn. My other side of my passion, why I speak and I'm so passionate about the frontline entry-level workforce, because a lot of them will tell you I have to follow. I tell them you ain't got to follow if you don't want to. You grow and develop yourself, and you can fire the boss. You can become the kind of person that a high-impact leader wants to have on their team. Yeah. But you got to do it while you're in a bad environment. You got to grow and develop yourself. If you don't have options, you got to do that while you're in a bad environment.
Yeah, because if you don't have options, you know what? Go pick up my 2, Think and Grow Rich and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Go pick up those 2 books, study those books, and then you have options.
Yep.
Influence and options. And that's great. That's great.
And the stuff your Napoleon Hill is a huge influence on me. 7 Habits is actually my #1 book of all time. Changed my life, and you'll see all of that in my books. Except, what people tell me is you make it so simple. Some people call me or email me. They'll be like, you need to send out a highlighter with your books, because I had to highlight the whole page. So they like either send out a highlighter or just start making the pages yellow, because you're killing me with all this.
I got to do it anyway. I got some more questions I want to come back to, but I want to ask you something, and I think maybe the listeners might like to hear this too. You have a way that you'll go to somebody's organization and not have a speaking fee. But I mean, let's not talk dollars and cents because we're eliminating your speaking fee. Would you want to share a little bit about how you do that? Why you do that? Not how, but why you do that?
Yes. So anybody that purchases, I don't know what you want me to share exactly, but anybody who purchases 200 books, I can't say it without saying the money part. Is that okay if I say that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so that's $3,600 if you buy 200 books. We got 32 books. You mix and match whichever titles you want, but you get 200 books and you get up to 2 hours of us speaking, which is covered with the 200 book price. $3,600 is the price of 200 books. We pay all our expenses. We'll travel to any of the 50 states, speak on site up to 2 hours, or speak at a conference up to 2 hours. We don't care if 10 companies want to split it 10 ways and split up the books, and everybody gets 20 books, and everybody pays $360, and they put, 10,000 people in a room. We don't care. But the reason I do that is really it's because the story I told you earlier, where when Zach gave me that 7 Habits audio, he had never even read the book, listened to the book, but he thought enough of me to hand it to me or give it to me.
Yeah.
And it changed my life. All I needed to do was be exposed to it. I didn't need somebody in my ear. I ain't ever had anybody in my ear telling me to go and grow. Since I discovered I was doing pretty good already naturally, just normally, I would say. But when I heard that audio, it changed my life. It put me in an entirely different gear. You can probably tell. And I saw how much value there was in what these people were saying if I just apply it in my life. And so that's one reason there's a couple of reasons I do the book deal. One of them is because somebody may want us to speak to 20 supervisors, but if they get 200 books, they hand out the books to like all the workforce or other people who don't get to come into the room. So it extends my reach beyond whoever's in the room. Another reason is because after I leave, they can go do these book studies. Because when I'm in the room, I'm going to try to inspire them to go do these book studies. I tell them, when I'm in a room with you, it's like I'm spraying you with a fire hose. You're going to hear some stuff. Most of it's going to go right past you, just like if I sprayed you with a fire hose. You might get a little bit of water in your mouth, but most of it's going to go past you.
Right on through you, yeah.
And when people are hearing this, especially for the first time, they're thinking. They do a lot of thinking, and they'll think for 5 minutes. They're looking in that mirror 10 minutes, and then they ain't even heard the last 10 minutes. So what I tell them is,
that's
if
the
you
power
do
of stories, though, too.
Yeah, and if you do the book study, that keeps the drip going. Right? We're going to come in and spray you with a fire hose, but we're going to give you these books as part of the package so that you can keep the drip going. Imagine if you had 20 people and you bought each one of them 10 books. Instead of handing them out, we speak to 10 supervisors, say, they get them 10 different books. That'll last them 3, 4, 5 years of book studies. We come in, speak for 2 hours, and they can train and develop themselves with book studies for several years if they'll do it. And that's the drip. Simon Sinek says, an event is kind of like going to the dentist. You got to go to the dentist twice a year, but you got to brush and floss daily. He said, going to the dentist is not what keeps your teeth in your mouth. Brushing and flossing every day is what keeps your teeth in your mouth. And it's the same way with an event. When we come in the room, that's like going to the dentist. That ain't going to, it might motivate you to inspire you, but you got to keep the drip going. And the best clients, that's why I say they do book studies, because they keep the drip going.
One thing you haven't mentioned yet, which struck me as the most powerful part of your books, as you say that you're willing to come in, no further charge. You come there on your own dime, sit at the hotel on your own dime. There's no more expenses. You buy the books.
Yep.
Because if you're willing to invest in your team by buying the books, I'm willing to invest in you.
That's exactly what we say. It's the truth. If you'll invest in your team, we'll invest in your team.
Okay. It's powerful. And your website's on there. So for those who are interested, I just had to bring that up. But let me get back to just a couple of things. Let me see if I can find it here real quick. You said sought after employees of choice.
Employer. Yep.
Employers. Excuse me. Employers.
But I also talk about the employees too. I talk about it from the other frame of reference. But the quote you have there, that's what my blue collar leadership and culture, the 5 components for building high performance teams. That's what this book is about. It's about helping anybody in any industry become I say with a capital THE, sought after employer of choice. What that means is being sought after employer means, in my words, and what I teach in that book, is people who don't work in your organization have a very strong desire to work in your organization. And so that's what everybody who runs a company wish, because all I hear all across the country, we just can't find good people. High impact leaders, very well led companies, they are attracting and retaining great people. They don't have to look for good people, because there's a lot of great people waiting to get in at the door. And that's what that book is about, helping them become that way. So how do you become a sought after employer of choice? Being a sought after employer of choice, you have to become an employer of choice, which means the people who already work there have a very strong desire to work there. Most people miss that. How do you get everybody who doesn't work here, who's in your industry, to want to work in your industry, and to have a very strong desire to work in your industry? Is how you treat the people who already work there, because those people
Key.
are brand ambassadors. Everybody that works in your company is a brand ambassador. When they're sitting at the football game on Friday night, somebody says, "What's it like to work at XYZ?" As soon as they open their mouth, they're going to attract somebody to that company or repel somebody to that company.
So key. That is so key. Get the folks inside to be your champions.
They already are, or either they're not. They're one or the other. I tell people, Glenn, every company's culture is either a competitive advantage or a competitive disadvantage. It is that right now, everyone. And if you want to know which one is it, it depends on your competition. If their culture is better than yours, your culture is a competitive disadvantage for you relative to them. If there's another company you compete with, their culture is worse than yours is a competitive advantage relative to that company.
Okay, so now I kind of track when you said two types of competition. That's what you're referring to.
Yeah, two types of competition. When I'm in a room, I'll always ask people who your competition is. And they always tell me people who are doing what they do, providing the same goods or the same services. I said, absolutely, that's one type of competition. And unfortunately, that's the only type of competition most people are really focused on. I said, but there's another key type of competition. That second type of competition, they're not trying to steal your customers. They're trying to steal your people. And the way you prevent them from stealing your people is the way you grow and develop them.
I got to get you to stop because that's a writable. You got tons of them, but that's one that just stands out. A writable moment. The second type of competition is they're trying to get your people, not just trying to beat you at the marketplace, but they're trying to get your people so they can beat you there even more so. That's powerful. I didn't mean to interrupt, but that just hit me. That's just powerful. They're trying to get your people. What type of culture do you have that prevents that?
And if they're better than you, they are going to get them. You're going to be searching for good people. They're going to be attracting great people, even the great ones in your company. And this, what we teach, leadership development, personal growth. See, we say personal development is the foundation of leadership development. That's why we do so much personal development, because you've got to get your character right. But you got to do it. I can't do it. So what we do is we tell stories, so many stories, and they're all common sense, just like that one. Whenever you hear that, whether you ever heard it or not, you know it's true.
Yeah, absolutely know it's true. Absolutely.
Everything that we teach is common sense, but it's not always common practice to apply it.
You know, just on a side note, the reason why that's common sense is because it's easy for people to see themselves in that because of the story.
Yep, they've either left a company, because see, I'll ask them. I'll ask when I'm in the room. I don't care how many people's there. I'll say, how many people in this room were working in a different kind of industry when you came to work at the company you're working in now? You know, hands go up. A lot of people left one industry completely different to come to this industry. I say, how many of you have ever lost people who were on your team? They left your company and they went and worked with somebody else in a completely different industry. And everybody knows, there's hands going all up. Everybody can validate that that's true. And I said, the root cause of how do you keep people from taking your customers is you do the stuff that's going to also prevent them from taking your people. Because that's, if you're growing and developing your people so well that nobody wants to leave, top talent wants to stay, and they want to attract other top talent, and they're telling everybody they know, come work here, they're going to be producing the best product, the best quality, the best delivery, all that stuff.
So there's 7 roles of leaders, and one of them is the main thing is to develop your people. That's the number one role, develop your people. And you're saying if you develop my people, they're not going to leave you for 50 cents or $1 more per hour.
Hardly ever, Glenn.
Yeah.
Glenn, whenever I'm teaching this, I'll say, there's some of you in the room right now that y'all have people on your team that you wish they would leave. You ain't fired them yet, but you wish they would leave, and you can't even run them off. And you wish they were not there. You don't have a good relationship. I say, imagine if these people loved you and felt cared about by you. You can't run them off. Then you may help them leave to go better themselves, because high impact leaders are not trying to hold on to the people. They're trying to grow the people. And if that means you go somewhere else, then that means I write you the best. I tell people, I write you the best reference letter you've ever had, as long as you're a starter when you're on my team. As long as you want to be on the field and not sit on the bench. If you decide to go, I'm going to give you the best reference you ever had. I'm going to help you. Because, see, that's going to build trust with everybody who stayed behind, because they know Mack really wants to help. Because if I help you leave, you're going to tell everybody else on the team, Mack helped me leave. That's just going to make them know that I care about them authentically even more.
That's kind of a argument, if you will, for why companies should be offering tuition reimbursement. 'Cause it doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
I know a lady who went through tuition reimbursement, got her law degree, and you would think she would have left that company right away, but she's still there 15 years later.
Yep.
Because
And if they value developing people, they don't care if they leave or not. They want to become like a people factory. Chick-fil-A was a client of ours and for 3 years, and they don't say they're in the chicken business. They say they're in the people development
yeah,
business.
yep,
And they're pumping people through. They don't care if they leave or if they stay. They hope they stay, but they don't care if they leave.
that is so true. That is so true. All about taking care of the people, and we can't forget about the blue collar people. Blue collar,
Yep.
the blue, and we do. I don't. I think you're the first trainer that I've been around that said I going to make a difference for the blue collar.
One
And
reason, Glenn, because I ain't chasing the money. Most people go chase the white collar executives because that's where the money is, the corporate
so they
money. Most
think,
of the time,
yeah,
it's not even their money; it's corporate money. But it's easy to get
yeah,
it because it's corporate money, and there's usually a budget for the top executives to go spend that corporate money on some type of development. But there's
yeah,
nothing for the frontline people usually, and that's one reason I do another reason I do that package for
the bird,
$3,600 because
yeah,
a lot of companies they've never spent any kind of money on developing the people. So I want to give them a tangible product so they say, "Hey, I'm getting books." A lot of them never would pay for a speaker. They don't see any value in that, but they kind of see the value in getting the books, and then we're there to speak basically for free is what it appears to be.
yeah. Well, very true, very true. So here comes my one question, and hopefully you're not tipped off to it right now. But tell me, what is the one question I should have asked you that I did not ask you, or what is the question I should have asked you that I didn't?
I think it would be, and I did watch Ria's podcast, but you already covered the one that I had that I would have said. So this is a
Okay.
surprise. But I would say, how has it impacted me personally? Because when we're speaking to people, that's what that's what we do more than anything is we actually make it about you as a person. We help people understand how it's going to change your life at home. Yes, it's going to make the place better where you work, but only if you get better. And if you get better, your life's going to be better everywhere you go, whether it's this job, the next job, whether it's at home, whether it's coaching a kid's sports team. But see, when Glenn, I share this personal story, and I share this a lot. I share tons of personal stories when we're on stage because it's probably like 60 or 70% personal, 30% about the job leadership type stuff because
Yeah.
you got to get people to buy in. I don't care why they buy in. All I care is do they buy in. And I know most of them going to buy in more for themselves than they are for the company, especially when they hadn't been led
Exactly.
well. And so I'll
Exactly.
say,
Exactly.
I tell them the story about hitting play on that audio. First time I ever heard it, that was in 2008. My son was 17 from a previous marriage, my only child. He hadn't spoken to me really. He hated me since he was 15. That's how bad I had got it wrong.
Mm.
And that was not my goal. But when he was 17, I hit play on that audio and I started reading every day and I started applying. I started changing. My mom said, this is how we borrow and leverage influence. And I didn't tell her to do this, but it happens. Mom started telling my son, Eric, your dad's changing. Your dad's changing. You need to give him another chance. He's changing. I don't know what's happening. But eventually, mom started reading the books because she was so interested in her son
What's
was
going on? Yeah.
transforming like
Yeah.
ridiculous. Because I used to be mean. I didn't want to help anybody. I wanted everybody to stay away from me. And I was in the Marines, in the infantry, so I had a lot to unlearn to become who I am today. So 2 years into my growth, now Eric's 19. He had hated me since he was 15. 2 years into my growth, he gave me an opportunity, and I did habit 5 of the 7 habits. I got it right after I've been talking it and teaching it for 2 years about seek first to understand and be understood. He called me. I was in Texas. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was in a hotel room, hadn't really spoke to me anything meaningful in 4 years, and he talked to me for 2 hours over the phone. It's because I got habit 5 right and listened to him. I didn't give him any advice, although I would have in the past because what he was talking to me about, I could have gave him a lot of advice, but he
Yeah.
never, until he asked, I didn't give him any. And he wanted to rebuild that relationship, once he saw that I was different. And then I took him, it was his birthday pretty soon after that. I took him to get some boots, and I took him about on an hour trip. So I kind of had him trapped in the car
Yeah.
so we could
Yeah.
talk more because I wanted to talk to him. I had missed him. And I put that audio in. I said, hey, you want to know what happened to me? Listen to this. So I was able to introduce him because he was interested. It's a lot. John Maxwell talks about the law of time and the law of intuition. And that's what
Yeah.
I was doing then. And he liked it. It resonated with him the same way it did with me. So then he wanted to work with me. So He started working with me in lean manufacturing consulting with zero experience, zero
Wow.
college. He watched me, Glenn, for 3 weeks. He sat in a room while I led Kaizen events with a PowerPoint. He saw me teach him leadership. He saw what we did. 3 completely different events. They were not even related. He just watched me 3 times, and then he was on his own. For 2 years, he was by himself. He'd be in one state, I'd be in another state. But I told him he had to read all these books I had been reading.
Yeah.
7 Habits, Speed of Trust, 5 Levels. And he soaked those things up like a sponge. And he could lead Kaizen events better than people who've been in the company 40 years could do it, because they tried to do it with artificial influence. He tried to do it with authentic.
Influence.
And he made, and I say this not to impress anybody, but maybe to inspire them. But he's had 3 different careers now. He's 30 years old. So this is, 11 years ago. He's had 3 completely different careers, zero experience in any of them. He still don't have college. He's probably never going to have college. He don't need college.
Yeah,
Some people need it. Sometimes you need it to get it. The principle is you got to have an education. It don't matter where you get it. You got to be educated. And he's growth oriented. He's always educating. But he's made over 6 figures in every one of those careers the whole time. He started out with me making 6 figures. His second job, he was selling Roth IRAs. He had no idea what that was. First month, he made $10,000. Third job he had, in between the second and third job, he just hung out and partied in Auburn, Alabama at Auburn University for 2 years. He didn't even work. He had so much money and residuals coming in. He just partied. I didn't give him any advice. He didn't say, "What do you think about me partying for 2 years, Dad?" He never asked me, so I never told him I didn't like it. I just
seek first to understand, then to
exactly right. And so his girlfriend graduated college. He moved to California out in San Francisco Bay Area with her, and he hadn't worked in 2 years. He said, "I got to make a lot of money to live out there, Dad." I said, "Yeah." I said, "You'll be fine." 3 weeks, he got a job selling custom doors and windows. He makes probably around $300,000 a year. Sometimes he's at the top of the sales board. Usually he's in the top 5. And I tell this to people because I didn't start reading and studying all this stuff to change his life or to help him in any way. I just thought it'd make me better. That's why I started. All this other stuff is a byproduct.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I find that interesting that he modeled you without you really telling them to. I think children model folks that they see without just really telling them to. But anything he picked up at the early age. This proves what a lot of these people say. Anything he picked up at a little early age, they say that's your personality for the rest of your life. You and him both seem to drop that.
Yeah,
it's walk away from that.
Yeah, a lot of people think that it determines you, but it doesn't determine you. But they think it does. Just like short temper runs in my family. After I listened to Dr. Covey, he said between stimulus and response, we had the freedom to choose our response. We can pause. Something happens. We can pause, choose our response. I learned that the very first day I ever listened to that in 2008. And I stopped it and I hit rewind and played it over and over and over. And I thought, this guy does not know me and my temper. But every time I had a angry situation after that, probably had 10 that day the way I was back then. But I remembered it and I said I had a choice, because what he taught right after that was we all have the freedom to choose our response, which means we're response able. And when you slide those together, it means we're responsible. And so as soon as that connected, I realized short temper doesn't run in my family, Glenn. Irresponsibility runs in my family.
That is so powerful right there. Response and able. Connect them. And
that's why it's up to us. There's a whole world out there trying to tell people the world's holding you back. There ain't nobody holding you back. Ain't nobody holding you back, Glenn, but you. Ain't nobody holding me back but me. I can blame everybody out there. I shared a quote today from a guy I met, Billy Ray Taylor. I met him. We were speaking at a Shingo conference in Orlando, Florida. Billy came up, talked to me at the back. At the time, he was vice president of North American operations for Goodyear. And he said, "Mack, I got to tell you," he said, "I've been to so many of these conferences. I speak. I don't pay attention, when I come in to speakers. The reason I had to come in is because somebody asked me to bring Rhea a card, their business card, because they told her they would be here and they're not able to be here. So that person just asked me to give her the card and say they apologize, something come up, they couldn't be here." He said, "But Mack, when you started talking, I had to get my notebook out, start taking notes." He said, "You were saying some good stuff." And during that conversation, he said something that stuck with me. That's what I haven't ever studied to learn all the stuff that I know. It's just stuck. And this quote I'm about to tell you is one of those things, I've read so much and heard so much, there's been a lot of things stick, but most of it goes right past me. But I
Well,
shared this quote on my LinkedIn page today from Billy. Billy says, in the absence of ownership comes blame. That was so powerful and profound. In the absence of ownership comes blame. You turn on your TV, they ain't nothing but everybody wanting to blame somebody. You don't see all the stuff that you and I talking about. That's what ought to be on TV every day. If it was, we'd live in a different world. But everybody wants to blame everybody, and because I want to blame everybody, I want everybody else to get with me and let's blame everybody. And then we all holding each other back. But I don't play it. That ain't the ballpark I play in. I don't watch news. I ain't even got cable. I try to keep up with current events, but it's so much negative. I don't even hardly want to do that. I just kind of read the headlines, but
you
I don't
know,
care about all that stuff.
one of my early mentors told me, he said, "You're going to stop watching news. Promise me that you stop watching for 6 months." It went to 6 years, but he said, "What I promise you is anything you need to know about, you're going to know about it. You
Yep.
just have to trust that." Oddly enough, I just finished my workout one morning, decided to go get a cup of coffee, walked in the coffee shop. On the TV was the second plane hitting Trade Center. Just as I walked in the door. When we had our big shooting at Columbine High School, my daughter was pretty young, but she was in a daycare center. It wasn't far from that. Oddly enough, I just happened to show up where they were showing it. I don't watch news, but I knew of these incidents almost as they were happening.
Yep.
People have to just trust the fact that you don't need to watch the news because it's going to give you. That's a side note, but that's where you and I are agreement. You're going to get what you need to get. You don't need to watch the news.
Yeah, there's very little. There's very little news today. Most of it is manipulation from everybody. It doesn't matter what political party. It don't matter what channel it is. Most people are using those platforms to manipulate people. That's why there's no trust. That's why, I hate so many people don't trust the vaccine right now, and they getting people. I had a cousin die 2 weeks ago. He's 26 years old, and 35 members of my extended family have it right now. Before I got on with you, two of them, my cousins about my age, just went in the hospital yesterday. One of them, they just moved. She got double pneumonia and moved her to it. But they didn't take the vaccine. It's a choice, and there ain't nothing wrong with having a choice. That's good. The problem is there's so much poor character everywhere that people don't trust anybody. So they just don't know what to do.
Let me give you and your wife this stroke right here, because you guys have said it, and this is what's wrong with the news. Money.
Absolutely.
You guys said you're not, yes, we have to make enough money to earn. We have to make enough money to survive and have a legacy and all those type of things, but it's not the driving force. And when you have all these news outlets, it's all about the money. How much can they charge per commercial? But when somebody like you is out there working with somebody, it's not really about the money. It's, can I help? The money will follow. There's no denying that. The money follows. When you help people, the money follows.
Yep.
But that's not the first thing. I'm going to make money. In order to make money, I got to have people follow. It's the other way for you and your wife, and I appreciate that. That's why I want you both on the show. I think it's just powerful. And honestly, people need to just look you up. Here, let me get, is it okay if they have your email address?
Yes, sir. It's Mack, M-A-C-K, at mackstory.com. M-A-C-K-S-T-O. That's it right there.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's important that if you have blue collar force, and to be quite honest, not necessarily all blue collar.
Yeah, we speak at medical.
Yeah.
Auburn University's been a client, medical, hospitals, banks. We speak to all kind of white collar groups. I put on my Halloween costume, my suit and tie when I'm speaking to those folks. It's about connecting though. If I wear a tie to the blue collar folks, I got to overcome that to build a relationship. If I wear blue jeans and hiking boots and a t-shirt to speak at Yale University, I got to overcome that. So we can make choices to make ourselves easier to connect with people. But
Absolutely.
Glenn, I tell you, people can call me. This phone right here, 334-728-4143. Anybody can call me. Somebody said one time, why do you give out your number on podcasts like that? Because I want people to call me.
Yeah.
It's on the top of my website. I want to talk to people. I don't want to talk about junk. I want to talk about leadership and personal growth. I do it 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. I don't care what time it is. If my phone rings and I ain't asleep and I ain't busy, I'm going to answer it.
Well, and what I would like to share with our listeners, we went past time, and that's just the way it's going to be.
I apologize for that.
No. That's just the way it's going to be between you and me. Whenever we do this, it's going to be past time. But I want to let people know that I'm going to have you back.
I'll
Okay.
be back. If you
Yeah,
want to talk
because
about this, I'll come back anytime. I love it.
yeah,
And I
because you know
love
what,
helping people like you.
we can take any of your concepts and just dive deep into them and
Yep.
spend an hour just talking about, okay, well, how and why is everyone a leader, for example? Okay, and I mean, John Maxwell's book, Jack Canfield's book, all those books will go right in there, and we'll spend hours.
I
So
got some good stories. I got some good stories of frontline entry level supervisors leading multi-billion dollar companies from
see,
from the frontline supervisor position. They're not the manager of the company, that's the CEO, but they're the most bought into this out of tens of thousands of employees, which means in my world they're the leaders. It's either going to be them that gets leadership in there or nobody's going to do it. I got some great examples of people like that who put it on
see,
their shoulders to say, I'm going to lead this company right from where I'm at.
we need that discussion, and I promise you, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have that discussion. Mac, I appreciate you so much. I knew it when we had our pre talk. This was going to be a great, and I knew we were going to have more than just one. I am so grateful that you took the time to do this. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
It's a privilege. Thank you for doing what you do, because you got a platform. We both sharing it. Make sure you let me know about this when it comes out. I'll share it out to my LinkedIn network. And for people to know, LinkedIn is my main platform. I'm all over the place, but that's the one. And I have a podcast. I have YouTube channels. I got all kind of free stuff out there.
Yeah, we'll talk offline about you, LinkedIn. Just like it helps me to understand that type of work a little bit better. So,
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you for connecting with us here at Touchstone Publishers. Please join our group Essential Leadership Skills and share your leadership knowledge with us all.